Next on the news, the Archbishop Emeritus of Hong Kong, a major figure in the Catholic Church, arrested in the Chinese city. Also,
you have in Cardinal Zen a man who's convicted completely to the service of the church there.
We'll speak with an expert on religious persecution about what the arrest means for the Vatican. Plus, new data shows inflation was worse than feared last month, what it means for those prices you're paying. And it was almost lost in a fiery accident, but this engagement ring endured the flames and the proposal took a surprising turn. Current News starts right now. Demonstrations like this one in Hong Kong taking place almost every day for years, but today, a top cardinal arrested for supporting that movement. Cardinal Joseph Zen, a friend of the Diocese of Brooklyn and a fierce advocate for democracy. You may remember his 2020 visit to a church in Flushing, Queens. I'm Christine Persichetti. The Archbishop Emeritus of Hong Kong is facing charges of colluding with foreign forces. The 90-year-old cardinal was arrested Wednesday by Hong Kong's National Security Police, and the State Department just released a statement condemning the arrest.
You can endure any kind of difficult situation.
That was Cardinal Joseph Zen in Queens back in 2020, talking about the pandemic that was just taking hold. Now, the 90-year-old is enduring a different difficult situation after his arrest by police in Hong Kong on Wednesday. The charge, collusion with foreign forces in connection with his role in a humanitarian relief fund that provides legal assistance to protesters arrested in 2019 demonstrations. In 2020, a new security law was implemented in Hong Kong that made participating in or even supporting the pro-democracy movement a crime. Hong Kong's Archbishop Emeritus has been a very public supporter of pro-democracy and independence protests. He spoke out about it after that mass at St. Michael's.
We are in a great danger to become just one like any city in China. What is happening is simply foolish. We hope God may wake them up.
Cardinal Zen has also been critical of religious persecution in communist China and of the Vatican's approach to it, saying the Holy See must speak more clearly on religious liberty. This was Cardinal Zen standing up for the persecuted in 2013.
La comunità, diciamo, underground, soffrono, sentono di essere un po' abbandonata.
After the security law went into effect, the cardinal had said he was prepared to suffer arrest and trials. He posted this on Facebook. If right and proper words were considered against their law, I will endure all the suing, trials, and arrests. Numerous predecessors have endured similarly. According to reports, the cardinal has been released on bail, but did not say anything to reporters as he left the police station. Cardinal Zen has a long history of supporting the pro-democracy movement and the protests for independence. Zen previously publicly delivered detailed critiques of Beijing. He has also been close to other high-profile dissidents, and Zen has gone as far as sleeping on the streets with student protesters. The cardinal has also been an outspoken critic of the Chinese president. The arrest comes nearly 4 years after the Holy See signed an agreement with Beijing, one the cardinal called a betrayal. Zen's jail time will test the effectiveness of that agreement and prove whether the Holy See actually yields any power when it comes to the communist nation. When the agreement was renewed in 2020, Claudia Torres told Current News the Vatican said the world must be patient to see if it bears fruit.
The Holy See and China renewed for another 2 years and experimentally their agreement on the procedure for naming new bishops. Long before becoming Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin was in Beijing twice. He can be considered a key contributor to this agreement.
I've compared this agreement with a seed sown on challenging land, where the Church still faces many difficulties. However, we hope that it will slowly produce fruit with a lot of patience and without expecting to see sudden changes. I don't think there will be immediate changes, but that's the way the Holy See does politics. It's a politics of small steps.
The content of the agreement has not been made public. And in 2 years, it has only allowed for the appointment of 2 new Chinese bishops in communion with Rome, despite the fact that there are 50 vacant dioceses in China. This agreement represents yet another important step, as the Vatican and China have not had diplomatic relations since Mao rose to power in 1950 and began repressing all religions. In a press release, the Vatican praised Beijing's decision to renew the agreement and expressed a desire to pursue an open and constructive dialogue for the benefit of the life of the Catholic Church and the good of Chinese people.
We're going to start working together with the Chinese people on this matter. I really hope progress and more improvements develop each day.
In the middle of negotiations, Washington had pressured the Vatican to not renew the agreement, to which the Holy See responded that it wasn't a political agreement, but one of ecclesiastical and pastoral value.
That was Claudia Torres reporting. Soon after the news broke, Matteo Bruni, the spokesman for the Vatican, said the Holy See was following the developments with extreme attention. Joining us now to talk more about the current situation in Hong Kong is Ed Clancey, the Director of Outreach for Aid to the Church in Need. Ed, you do a lot of work on the topic of religious persecution. Thanks for being here to speak with us about it.
You're very welcome.
What does the arrest of such a high-profile cardinal mean for the underground church in China?
Well, it's an obvious statement by the government, by the people in power, that they're watching everyone, and anyone can fall prey to this kind of action. So It's a definite statement.
And, you know, authorities in China usually make arrests under the cloak of secrecy. This one was very public, and now we're hearing that the cardinal was released on bail. Do you think this was just an intimidation tactic?
I don't think it's just an intimidation tactic. I think obviously it has that part of it, I think, but also it is about control. It is about telling the people in charge of the church, we're here at all times, and we can do this at any time that we want.
All right, as we said, we've heard from the Vatican that they're watching this situation closely. What do you expect from the Holy See now?
Well, the Holy See has to operate in a different level than any of us. So, you know, there's a natural tension that exists between dioceses and the Holy See. So there's different things going on at different levels. And diplomacy with China is a different creature. So there's a lot of talk, a lot of discussions that go on without our knowledge, and those will continue. It's a very delicate situation.
And the response from the Vatican previously, the Cardinal has spoken out against that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the important things to understand about Cardinal Zen is maybe his last tweet. He said that I am truly convinced that nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. Not any other creature, neither death nor life. So you have in Cardinal Zen a man who's convicted completely to the service of the church there. And as I said, it's a different dynamic at the diocesan level than at the Vatican level. So he's got to operate in a sense of putting a dynamic tension on the relationship with both the government and with the Holy See.
Right. So now do you think after this arrest, this will cause even more passionate protests and more pushes by the underground Catholics in the country? You know, does this kind of empower the people there?
I think there's always the example of Tertullian in that the blood of the martyrs are the seeds of the faith, that sense of that martyrdom. And this is what, you know, would be a white martyrdom, you know, sacrifice, but not necessarily death or outright suffering. I think there will be an increase of this idea of we're in this for the long haul. We have to understand that there may be as many as 300 million underground Christians and as many as 100 million underground Catholics in China. So that's an extraordinary number, and this is something that I think the Chinese government does not want to lose control of.
And China is one of the worst places to live if you are a Catholic, right?
It probably would be, yeah. You know, it's very controlled what they do, what's said. I mean, they use biorecognition, and they know everyone and where they are at all times. They target 39 points on your face and features, and even the pattern of your walking. So this is how it is there.
So Cardinal Zen is 90 years old. What do you think this means for him? Do you think he'll sit back now and say, okay, I'm done, or you think this is just going to make him fight more?
Back in 2018, when he was at the Ministerial for Religious Freedom, I saw him and I said, how are you? And we had a brief conversation. He says, I think this is the last time I'm going to be traveling. Of course, that's not so. He's kept going. He's a man of great courage, conviction, and inner strength.
Wow.
So I think he won't stop until the Lord calls him.
Unbelievable, amazing. All right, Ed Clancey from Aid to the Church in Need, thanks so much for joining us, and the story isn't going anywhere, so I'm sure we'll talk to you again about it.
Well, thank you for having the opportunity to speak.
For continuing coverage of the situation with Cardinal Zen, go to thetablet.org or follow The Tablet on Facebook and Twitter. A new report just out by the Interior Department says more than 500 American Indian children died at U.S. boarding schools, and that number is expected to grow. The comprehensive review was done in response to the discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at similar schools in Canada. Bishops and the Pope have apologized for the conditions there. This report catalogs the conditions of more than 400 boarding schools between 1819 and 1969. The Senate rushed to vote Wednesday on a women's health measure, but that vote to codify Roe v. Wade was almost certain to fail. President Biden called on the Democratic-controlled Congress to approve the proposal, which would make abortion access a federal law. But the party's slim majority appears unable to overcome a filibuster by Republicans. There's been protests nationwide since a draft opinion to overturn Roe was leaked last week. Now to the inflation situation, a much-anticipated report on consumer prices giving some mixed messages. The peak may be behind us, but that means little to millions of Americans who are still facing eye-popping prices at the pump, in grocery stores, and at car dealerships. Gloria Pazmino has the breakdown of the new numbers and a look at what, if anything, the government is doing to help.
A bit of a reprieve, at least for now. The U.S. inflation rate declined for the first time since August. And while prices still increased, it's happening at a slower pace than in previous months.
I'm a little hesitant to call it good news because we don't know, of course, where it's going to go in the next few months.
According to new Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers released Wednesday, the consumer price index was up 8.3% in the 12 months ended in April, a decrease from the 8.5% recorded in March, which marked the highest inflation level in more than 40 years. The numbers suggest the inflation peak could be behind us, but major global events continue to shake up the economy.
Of course, the war in the Ukraine that Putin is waging is having an effect on energy prices in particular.
That means Americans may not feel an improvement in their wallets just yet. Housing, food, and plane tickets saw some of the steepest price increases.
Gas prices are higher today than they were a few weeks ago. Families are paying over $150 in many cases to fill their vehicle, and they're angry about it.
America's fighting on two fronts. At home, it's inflation and rising prices.
The pressures that have kept inflation rising for months are still strong, a problem for American households already strapped for cash. In New York, Gloria Pazmino, Current News.
Now to a closer look at those gas prices. Parts of New York and New Jersey seeing record highs. But let's take a look around the country. According to GasBuddy.com, the national average for a gallon of gas is now at $4.40. That's up 23 cents from the start of the month. And it's soaring in New York City. The average price for a gallon in the Big Apple is now $4.69. There's a lot more news headed your way. A plea to the Pope from the wives of Ukrainian soldiers. Their husbands are making a final stand at Mariupol. And refugees in Rome, how convents and parishes in the Eternal City are welcoming them with open arms. Plus, mixed feelings out of Ukraine, why this World War II veteran who once served the Soviet Union now calls Russia his enemy.
There are now some big changes to the Tablet website. You can get personalized access to the Catholic news you value. Sign up for free at thetablet.org.
Pope Francis comforting the wives of 2 Ukrainian soldiers at the end of his general audience Wednesday. Their husbands, just 2 of the 500 soldiers defending a steel plant that has been the focus of Russian shelling and the last holdout of Ukrainian forces in Mariupol. The women begged for the Holy Father's help to create humanitarian corridors so they can escape, the Pope in turn reassuring them with his prayers. Those 2 women aren't the only ones getting help in Italy. All across Rome, convents and parishes have been opening their doors, hoping to help the refugee crisis that continues to grow. Sean Patrick Levitt reports.
Тому що було багато розстріляно машин і транспорту, і поїздів, які вивозили біженців.
That's how Vita describes her escape from Ukraine. The corpses of her fellow countrymen littering the ditches along her journey from Kremenchuk near Kharkiv to the Polish border remind her of the risk she took fleeing the country.
Так, це для мене був дуже важкий вибір. Ну, я не пожаліла про нього.
Vita is one of the 102 people, mostly women and children, who've been given a home in one of the 23 structures that have received Ukrainian refugees through a project launched by Caritas Rome together with the Italian Civil Protection Department.
We are part of a process called Widespread Welcome that the Church in Rome has been experimenting with for years, especially since 2015. Pope Francis called us to open our own homes, convents, monasteries, religious institutions, parishes. This is an effort that has been going on for some years. So when we launched this call to welcome, to encounter and be close to these people, we found fertile ground.
One of the parishes offering lodging and financial support is St. Corbinian's, where Vita and her children have found the peace they longed for when they left Ukraine behind.
Дуже комфортно, насправді, дуже комфортно. Ми вже звикли, тобто нас нічого не турбує, нам все подобається.
Звичайно, я не жалію, що я приїхала сюди, що зараз мої діти в безпеці, сплять спокійно.
That was Sean Patrick Lovett reporting. Caritas Rome was able to actively respond to the flood of refugees leaving Ukraine as early as last March. The Senate is expected to quickly approve a measure sending another $40 billion in aid to Ukraine. The House already approved the bill, and Senate Republicans are anticipating strong support for it. The additional aid would further the U.S. commitment to helping Ukraine win the war against Russia. The new legislation would bring American support for the effort to nearly $54 billion. A pontifical charity announced that it will help rebuild the Sacred Heart Seminary in Vorzel, Kyiv. It was damaged and looted by Russian troops early in the war. The help is being provided by Aid to the Church in Need. This initiative means the seminary will again be able to reopen its doors in September. Veterans in Ukraine who fought for Russia during World War II were not celebrating on Victory Day. The day marks the win over Nazi Germany during the war. As Sarah Sidner reports, they now call Russia the enemy.
Vasil Kluy helped battle back the German advance in World War II when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union. His proudest moments helping liberate Mariupol by sea. We liberated Mariupol from the Germans in 1943. We went there with 3 warships and wrecked 11 different German ships, he says. 77 years after Victory Day, he has mixed feelings about Russia. It pains him to say it, but the country he once fought for has turned into the enemy, leveling the very same city he fought so hard to save from Hitler's onslaught. For all of us who went through the war at the time, it hurts. I want to take up arms now and go to defend the same places and my country, he says. On the anniversary of Victory Day, there are no celebrations here, only mementos and memories. It's no longer a holiday. It's very difficult, he says. There aren't many of us left. But Metodi Volinets is still here. The 96-year-old World War II veteran doesn't have to remember the terror of war. He's been given fresh memories. Russian tanks blasted a hole in the front of his home in the tree-lined suburb of Warsaw. He fought as a Soviet against the Germans, but has never had any love for the Soviets after he says he was jailed for speaking up against them. I was awarded medals and orders for victory, but I did not recognize them and never wore them, he says. He says Putin's Russia has started a war it cannot win. It's an atrocity. It's vandalism, he says. Probably the leadership is stupid. Only idiots would do this, start a war against Ukraine. Both men say they have the will to fight again, if not with their bodies, then with their words. Why am I smiling? Because I believe that we will rebuild this house and that Ukraine will win.
That was Sarah Sidner reporting. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky released a Victory Day message. He honored the Ukrainians who fought and died during World War II. Zelensky also talked about the current war, saying, quote, "We are fighting for our children's freedom and therefore we will win. Still to come on Currents News, an exclusive story from the tablet that you won't want to miss, how a teen raised more than $100,000 in a short amount of time. And it's a proposal for the history books. A typical day for some firefighters turned into something they will never forget. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A sophomore at the Mary Louis Academy in Queens has raised more than $100,000 in cancer research, and she did it in record time, all for her sister who's fighting leukemia. Julia O'Sullivan raised the huge sum in just 6 weeks through a series of fundraisers, including a party at a Rockaway Park restaurant, races at the Mary Louis Academy, her high school, and a series of dress-down days. To read more about Julia's efforts and to see other amazing stories like it, pick up a copy of the Tablet newspaper at your local church, or to get it delivered directly to your mailbox, you can subscribe at thetablet.org. Finally, a young man in Tennessee is breathing a little bit easier after nearly losing an engagement ring to a vehicle fire. Emily Luxon reports on how this memorable marriage proposal was only made possible thanks to the quick thinking of some firefighters.
Firefighters at Williamson Fire Rescue Station 28 Paytonsville head out on life-saving missions every day. But one of their latest calls was life-changing.
We got the call for a vehicle fire on the interstate.
Just before noon Monday, Captain Stephen Homrich, engineer Steve Hopkins, and firefighter Mitchell Greenham were part of a crew that responded to the scene of a car fire on 840 East.
When we got there, the hood was completely melted down. The tires were almost consumed. It was rocking and rolling pretty fast.
Crews were able to put the fire out quickly and no one was hurt, but they learned there was something very valuable left inside the car. While the Nissan Altima was burned beyond recognition, one of the passengers told firefighters somewhere in the rubble was a box containing a diamond engagement ring the driver had just bought for his girlfriend.
I started digging around in the ashes, and lo and behold, it was up over under the driver's seat, melted to the corner post of the seat, basically, and I kind of just wiggled it loose and opened it up, and it was just like brand new.
The surprising discovery led to an impromptu proposal that firefighters were able to record on the groom-to-be's phone.
We got down on one knee safely off the interstate, and we weren't sure what her reaction was. We couldn't hear what they were saying because of the traffic in the distance, but she had a tear in her eye, and I saw a nod of yes and kiss.
Go on.
It was a moment firefighters were proud to witness, and the couple will cherish forever.
We see a lot of different things, and a lot of it's not so good, but you know, it's not every day you get to see something like that.
I think they had a proposal they'll probably never forget in their entire lives.
Congratulations to the happy couple. That was Emily Luxon reporting. The bride-to-be says the ring still felt warm from the fire when her boyfriend slipped it on her finger. Amazing. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.